Morning, church. I've got some things over here. That was awesome. Thank you, kids. I don't know that last song. I couldn't sing because I couldn't look at the words because I was staring at the kids trying to get the. Anyone else struggle with that, or is it just I'm super white? One or the other. Um, okay, option two. Yeah, I was like, yeah. Okay, good, good. I wasn't the only one. It's like, man, those kids are doing it. I can do this. And it took me the whole song, and I was still like, oh, wait, no, I don't know. But that was great. So thank you. That was really good. I love the fact that they were singing. Oh, thank you. Singing about wanting to go to church. That's a song they picked out, and that they want to go to church. And I'm grateful that we have so many young kids in our church. And hopefully in 10 years, when you're in your young adult years, you'll still want to come to church. That's my hope, because I think that's where we struggle, is in that age range. And before we get any further, I saw Fred's hat, and I think we need to just take a second. And if there are any veterans in this room today, anyone serving currently or have served in any of our armed forces, if you'll please rise and stand. Monday is Veterans Day. We want to take a second and just say thank you to our veterans. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are totally indebted to you. On Monday, we get to do a cool thing at our school at Madison Academy. We're going to a retirement home, and they're going to have a little parade for their veterans in the home. They're going to walk across their parking lot, and we get to be holding signs and cheering them on as they walk across their parking lots to honor the veterans in that retirement home. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think that's a pretty cool thing that our kids get to do. And then, man, today's already been so full of such good service. Elijah's, that blessing, it's huge. Yeah, I know. I mean, we just, I just think, last week we had that prayer, we had that song about we need a move, and I believe God answered that in your case, and miracles happen in this place. I firmly believe that. I believe we come here, miracles happen, and man, every week it seems like I'm getting emotional every week at church, and it's like I don't get emotional all throughout the week, and I come to church and I get emotional. I'm just like, what is happening? Why is this happening? And that is because God is moving, and there's passion, and in my heart, there's passion for this place, and there's passion for each of you, and I think that is, it's huge to have that passion, to feel that. I just feel it on Sabbath mornings. I'm getting ready for church, and it's like, man, today's the day where I have that passion. I don't have it much throughout the week, but man, when I come to church, I get that passion. It's exciting, and I hope that our church feels that passion, and I hope that we get more passionate as we move on. And before we get into that, I do need to. Felicity, are you here to do this? You're awesome. All right, there's kids. If you have if you want to, raise your hand. If you want a coloring sheet, Felicity's got firm instructions. Raise your right hand, she says. So if you want a sheet, I got treats afterwards. You fill that out. Parents, you can fill it out too. Treats, it's Halloween candy that's left over. So, anyways, we have this passion, or I have this passion, and I hope that you have this passion too. And it really hit me. Well, it's hit me a lot over the last few weeks. But 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you were here, but Garen preached a sermon that was amazing. If you were here 2 weeks ago, I thought, Garen's preached a lot of sermons up here, but my humble opinion, it was his best ever. So if you were not here, I'd go back and watch that. Or if you were here, just go back and watch it anyways. And he was talking about being in the desert and taking steps towards the promised land. If you remember that sermon. Remember that? I know it's 2 weeks ago. Things get lost. But that was a really good sermon. And when he preached that, I just felt this like passion, this desire, like, man, this is what it needs to be about, is going to that promised land. And are we there? Are we on that track? Are we heading in that direction individually and as a church? Because I think that's, and I don't want to, assume what Garen was talking about, but I think Garen was, he put it on us individually, but I think also in the back of his mind, or maybe in the forefront of his mind, he was saying, as a church, we need to move forward to the promised land. And I think we get too comfortable in our desert places. And I want our direction to be towards the promised land, to be moving forward that way to obviously the ultimate promised land, which is heaven, but to a greener pasture here on earth within our church. I have that vision, I have that passion, and Garen had that when he preached that, and I know that we have that passion as a church, but we've got to take the steps in order to do that. It's not just going to happen. We're not just going to one day show up in the promised land. If you read that whole account, there was battles that had to be fought. There were miracles that needed to happen. There was a lot of praying, a lot of communication with God. A lot of these things had to transpire in order for them to enter the promised land. And we need that same thing here at church. And I have a passion that will be there, that passion will be, we don't just have to hear a story of cancer being healed, but that every week we come here, whether we're hearing this amazing story or not, we are moved by the time that we leave church because we have that passion and that desire for one another and for this church building. I mean, not this church building, this church family. Sorry, I know Mike. Where's Mike? He writes things on this shirt to make sure. It's church family, not church building. And speaking of the shirt, it was about a year ago that we passed those shirts out that say, I love my church, right? I love my church. And I thought about that this week as I was writing a sermon. I talked it over with Andrea a little bit and said, I love my church, but how much have I grown? How much have I, shown that or experienced that in the last year? How much have we as a church have we moved forward? Because it's just kind of it's a measuring stick about a year ago to now. And honestly, I don't know. Honestly, there's nothing I can really point to say, as a church, man, we have made leaps and bounds and progress from November 2018 to November 2019. Man, look how far we've come. Look how much closer to the promised land we've gotten to in this last 12 months. And as I kind of look back over, I thought, I'm not sure there's anything that I can really grab onto, tangible things to really say, man, we have grown this much in the last year. A lot of it's just, we've kind of gone through the motions, kind of done what we've needed to do, maintained. And the way I see it is we're just kind of circling. We're in the air, we're flying, we're doing well, but we're just kind of circling. And it's time to take off. It's time to go somewhere. And I think the year 2020, I think we as a church can do amazing things. And there could be a lot of growth. But we have to find that passion. We have to find that passion that happens when we felt it, when we heard that... We heard Elijah's testimony this morning. That passion that we felt when we heard that he is cancer-free. As I looked around, I had tears in my eyes. I looked around and I saw numerous people out there with tears in their eyes because they were passionate for that. Can we get passionate week in, week out for our church? I hope so. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Is the root of what we are, who we are, why we're here, and where we want to go, and how do we do that? How do we get this passion? And in order to get the passion, I think the first thing we need to ask ourselves is why. The question, why? Why are you here this morning? Why do you come to this church week after week after week? To this church. You could go down the road a mile that way or down the road a mile or two that way, and you can hit another Adventist church that meets on Sabbath morning, and you could go there. But why this church? And probably a lot of us pass numerous other churches on the way here that are closer, more convenient, but we choose Oasis. Why do we choose Oasis? So if you will humor me, a little bit. What I'm going to do is I've got these little, can I get a couple volunteers? Couple volunteers? Maddie, thanks. I just want you to pass out a Post-it note to everybody. And over the next few minutes, if you don't mind, I don't have pens, but everybody. I don't have pens, but hopefully you can share. If you have a pen, share with your neighbor. But what I would love for you to do is just on there, I'd like you to write down one thing. I'd like you to write down why you fell in love. Hopefully you're in love. If you're not in love, at least you're here. So why did you come? But hopefully, why do you love Oasis Church? We have that t-shirt, I love my church. Family. Why do you love Oasis? Why do you come here? Why are you here this morning? Whatever, just one reason why you chose here today, why you choose here week after week after week. Just one reason. Your most important reason. This is your why. Why you got up this morning. You could have slept in bed. You could have been sleeping. You could have decided to do all sorts of things this morning, but you chose to be here. And most of you choose to be here week after week after week after week. Why is that? Why did you fall in love with this place? Why did you choose to make this place yours? Most of you, I don't know about most, but a lot of you have come from other churches. You left other churches in order to be here. Why did you make that choice? So, if you could write that down and then hold on to it, I do want to collect it. I'm a teacher, so I give you assignment. I collect them and grade them. But if you will write that down, I would like to collect them in a few minutes. So if you could humor me and do that, I would appreciate that. Thanks, Manny. Thanks, Tim. Oh, okay. 2 reasons. It's good. All right. So, why do we do what we do? Now, the Israelites, back when Garrett was talking about a couple weeks ago, they chose not to enter the promised land. They sent some spies, if you remember, 12 spies out there to kind of spy it out, see what's going on. And they came back, and Joshua and Caleb were like, yeah, we can do this, let's do this. And the other 10 spies are like, we can't do this. There's giants, it's crazy, we're going to all die. And so the people believed the 10 spies rather than Joshua and Caleb, and they chose not to do it. They chose not to move forward. And I think the biggest reason was, I mean, obviously there's fears, there's insecurities, but I think the biggest thing is that they didn't have a why. They didn't have a why for why they were doing it. All they knew was that they just left Egypt a few months before. They left Egypt, and they were out in this desert area, and they were like, why are we doing this? Well, Moses was saying because God told us that. But they're like, who's God? Why does God matter to us? We were in slavery for over 400 years, and now God wants to show up on the scene. We're supposed to do this for this God. If he really cared about us, he would have gotten us out of there 400 years ago. So their why, I don't think their why was strong enough to compel them to move forward. And I think that can be the problem with our church. If our why is not strong enough, we're not going to move forward. In our lives, our why has got to be there. Do you have a why in your life? Why you get up in the morning? Why you go to work? What about your marriage? Why are you married? If you don't have a why in your marriage, that's a struggle. And I know from firsthand experience, and it's not just necessarily that you don't have a why, but maybe your whys don't match. And I know for Andrea and I, in the first couple of years of our marriage, our whys didn't match. She got married to me and thought, oh, I'm going to develop a deep, intimate relationship with this man. And I wanted that, but my main why was like, okay, now that we're married, I want to make sure everything's stable in our family. Make sure the kids are taken care of. Make sure that everything is in order, that we've got every T crossed and I dotted, that everything is fine and that the kids are taken care of. And she just wanted more time with me, and I was like, whoa, we got to take care of these kids. We got young kids, elementary age kids to take care of that we've got to be in charge of. And so my why was like, okay, we'll put us on hold while we take care of the kids. And her why was, I want to be closer with you. And so it was kind of button heads to try to make it work, to try to understand, to try to match our whys, it wasn't really happening because our whys were not in the same direction. And as a church, our whys have to be heading in the same direction. You see, when we have whys, we have a purpose. We have a purpose, we have a direction, and we know which way we want to go. So when we have a solid why as a church, and we have a solid why as a family, we have a solid why as a married couple, we have a solid why as a company, this is what 5 things that helps us do. Number 1, it helps us stay focused. We don't get distracted by everything else because we know where we're going, we know where we're headed. The problem with the children of Israel, when they looked over in the promised land, they did not stay focused because they didn't have their why. They saw the giants. They saw how fortified their cities were, how strong their army was, and they said, oh, we're getting distracted by all these other things. They didn't have the why to focus them. A why adds value to whatever it is, to your marriage, to your life, to this church. If we have a why, it becomes much more valuable. This place becomes valuable. It's not just some place we go and spend a couple hours every week. Now it's valuable. Now we can't get enough of it. Now we want more of it. And that's what I want, is that passion for our church. And that's number 3. It ignites passion. When we have a why, it ignites passion within us. And wouldn't that be awesome if every week we came in here and just the passion just filled the room? We were just so passionate about God, about one another, that we couldn't contain it. There's clarity. When we have a why, we know what we're doing. There's no second guessing. There's no, what about this or what about that? Or, we know, no, this is our direction. This is where we're going. Everybody's on board. And the last thing, it encourages trust. And that's probably the biggest thing in my marriage with Andrea that got broken in that time when our whys weren't lined up and matched, is our trust. We didn't trust one another fully because, I said, well, let's go do this. And she thought, well, he's just doing that for the kids, not really for me, and it's just, it wasn't big things, it was little things, but that trust just slowly gets eroded when you don't have a why. But when you bring that why back together, and now we have a purpose, and now we have a focus, and now we're heading in the right direction, all of a sudden we can trust each other. We can trust that we're going in the same direction, that we're all on the same page, that we want the same thing, and that when we have this why and we're focused, now we trust. Now we're not looking across the aisle like, well, they're only doing it because they want to get their way, or they've got their hidden agenda, or it only helps that group or that group. It's like, no, this is us, and we're moving forward. And so we need a why, and that's the purpose of a why is for all of this. In order to get to the why, in order to get to the purpose, we have to first and foremost figure out what we are rooted in. Where are we right now? What are we rooted in? And obviously, we want to be rooted in God, right? We want to be rooted in Him. Individually, personally, as a church body, we want to be rooted in God. Are we rooted in God? I think a lot of us like to say we are, but I think a lot of us can relate to this. I know I can, unfortunately. But a few weeks ago, some of my students were in class, and they were talking about cell phones, and they said, hey, let's check our usage. Anybody in here have an iPhone? All iPhone people, if you don't have an iPhone, I'm sorry. But on Sundays, because I'm up here, I can get to do that. On Sundays, I think on my phone, I think it's 9 a.m. every Sunday, I get a little notification. It says, check how much time is on your cell phone, how much time you used on your cell phone. I was like, okay. It's like, oh, wow. That's crazy. So anyways, the students in the class said, let's check this out, and let's see who's got, because that's what it was. There was an argument between, well, the guys are on their cell phone more than the girls. No, the girls are on the cell phone more than the guys. And so they started arguing. We said, okay, let's put it to the test. Let's figure it out. And so they all got together, and we had about an even number of guys and girls. And so they went back and they checked their cell phone usage, the average time for their cell phone usage over the last 7 days. And I was shocked. I was shocked. The average time for each student, when we went through this class, the average time for each student was a little over 5 hours a day on their phone. Some of the students had 10 plus hours a day. Like, am I even awake that long? Like 10 plus hours a day they were on their cell phone. And that's just an average per day. That wasn't like their biggest day. That was just an average. So it could range from like 9 to 13, you know. It was just crazy. I was like, wow. You know, I checked my phone. I'm like, you know, I felt pretty good at that point. I was like, oh, I'm only like 2.5, 3 hours a day. You know, I'm feeling pretty good. But then when I even stopped and think about that, like, what could I do with 2.5 hours a day if I wasn't just like attached to my screen? And I want to ask you all how many you're at, because some of you are like 5 hours. That's nothing. Some of you think that's crazy, but that's the world we live in, and that's the distractions that we have around us. And we say, well, I'm rooted in God, and yet 5 hours a day can be traced back to the videos and the social media and everything else on your phone that you're doing. Are we really rooted in God? Am I rooted in God? Am I spending 2.5 hours a day being rooted in God? Or am I spending 2.5 hours a day watching fails on YouTube? What are we doing? It's not just our phone either. It could be our work. It could be all sorts of things in our life. Is we are attached to our phones. And could you go a day without praying and connecting with God? Some are like, hey, I do that every day. Could you go a day without your phone? That you just put that aside and you didn't touch it for the whole day, 24 hours. For a lot of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, it'd be harder to go a day without our phone than a day without connecting with God. Because for a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't really connect with God that often on a regular basis anyways. And so what are we rooted in? What are we rooted in our lives? It's got to be God. It's got to be God. And anything less than God, anything other tan God, is just a waste of time. It's just something that it's crippling us. This is a great verse that I'd like to read. If I can have another volunteer, somebody, or the same volunteers. Maddie's my trusty volunteer. Maddie's going to come around, and if you could drop your little paper back into this little bucket thing, that would be great. Thank you. Now, this verse that I found, this is a prayer that Paul said for the church of Ephesus that he had. And this prayer is so powerful to me. As I read through this, I would love this prayer to be for our church. That as we read through this together, I want you to think about this prayer. This is found in Ephesians chapter 3, verses 16 and 19. For this prayer to be a prayer for us. In fact, I changed the wording a little bit. Instead of him saying they, I said our, because I wanted to make it more personal. So that's the only thing. But this comes from the Voice version of the Bible, if you've ever heard of that. It says, Father, out of your honorable and glorious riches, strengthen us, your people. Fill our souls with the power of your Spirit, so that through faith the Anointed One will dwell in our hearts. Get that? The Anointed One to dwell in our hearts. How powerful is that? May love be the rich soil where our lives take root. Did you catch that? May love be the rich soil where our lives take root. May it be the bedrock where our lives are founded, so that together with all of your people, we will have the power to understand the love of the Anointed is infinitely long, wide, high, and deep, surpassing everything anyone previously experienced. God, may your fullness flood through our entire beings. Such a powerful prayer that Paul put together there. That the fact that we need to be rooted in God's love, first and foremost. I think back to this church, Oasis Church. I wasn't here in the very beginning. I came in halfway through this church's history. So I don't know all the ins and outs, but one thing I learned last week as I was talking to Donna, and she said, at the beginning of our church, we were sitting around talking about what we wanted our church to be about. And she said, Don Watson said something profound to her and something that really stuck with her. And he said, whatever we're about, we got to be about, thank you very much, Maddie, cliffhanger. We got to be about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the love of Jesus Christ. If it's anything else but the gospel of Jesus Christ, we shouldn't be here. And that is what our church needs to be about every week, the gospel, the love of Jesus Christ. That is at the root of who we are. That's the root of not just this church, but that's at the root of who we are as a people, is the salvation and gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's got to be front and center of who we are. Because his love is infinitely long. That means you can't outlive his love. Once you get to a certain age, it's not like, well, I'm done. No, it keeps going. Even after we've passed away, his love keeps going. It's infinitely wide. His love covers every situation, every experience. There is no place that you can run. There's no situation you find yourself in that God's love is not cast over you. It is infinitely high. There is no experience. There is no high moment in your life, no success, nothing that you do that can go above God's love. And there's nothing deep. There's no trial. There's no sickness, illness, no failure that's too low where God's love is not there. This is what it's about. God's love and being rooted in that love. That's where we need to be. And how do we get there? I personally need to put my phone away a little bit more and spend more time in his word. I need to spend a little bit more time on my knees praying to him, connecting. I need to spend a little bit more time turning the noise off and just listening to him. We have got to be a church, first and foremost, that desires a relationship with Jesus. If we're not desiring that, we're just going through the motions. It's why we're here. We are here for you. That's what that song said last week. Come and do what you do. But first and foremost, we are here for you. We are here for God, and we've got to be here for God. If we're not rooted in the dirt, Jesus says this, Mark 4:17. But without deep roots, without being rooted in God's love, doubt. Anybody struggle with doubt? I raise my hand. Doubt, trouble. Anybody else have trouble in their life? Or persecution instantly withers our faith. When we're not rooted in God's love, we are going to be a church that doubts, that has trouble, and that will run away when any bad thing happens. We are not going to be able to sustain what we're trying to sustain. Same in your marriages. Same in your relationships with your family, with your coworkers. When you're not in prayer, when you're not poring over God's word, when you're not doing these things, we're going to have doubt. It's just going to happen. And if we doubt, I'm speaking to myself here, it's probably because I'm not rooted firmly enough in the love of God. So, I want to read this now. Read a couple of I'm just going to pull out. I'm not going to read all of these. We'd be here all day. But I'm going to just pull out a couple of these to see what they say. I'll leave the names off. We want a church home for our growing family. We found our home in our family here. That's a good one. Okay? So family. That was good. I like that. Because I like this too. I may have written this one. Because I like donuts and potluck. Food speaks volumes. But you know why we like food? Because it brings us together. You know, potluck isn't the same if you're eating potluck alone. And I've learned that. At first I used to think the exact same thing, like, oh, I just want the food. But then I realized, like, I can get food at home. I can get food down the road at a restaurant. Like, I want the food because there's other people to eat it with. So, the front and back, wow. 3 things. We do not have to dress in skirts. Thank you, Garen. Wait, no, this wasn't guys. or maybe Bob. Where's Bob? Is he here? Oh, sorry. That's a kilt. It's not a skirt. Okay. Yeah, that's right. We can wear skirts here. Okay. We can sing. The kids, this is written by a kid, I guess. We get to be able to sing, which is awesome, isn't it? Now, the kids can come up here and sing. We're not like, oh, no, they're not good enough. You got to go sit down. Like, no, come on up and sing. That was great. And again, donuts and potlucks. Fred, you are pleasing a lot of people. A lot of people are coming to our church because of those donuts. Another one says music. Music's good, but again, it's about singing together as a congregation, as a family. I can sing in my car. And I probably sing louder in my car, but it's doing it together as a church family. I love the friendliness of this church. I like that. Again, relationships with one another. I feel close to God with the music and the friendly people. Okay? A lot of music, a lot of friendly people. We'll do a couple more. I want to see all of them, so we'll skip that one. That one's a little embarrassing for me. But I appreciate that, whoever wrote that. It's relaxed. It's fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. That's good. Here's a long one. Let's see that. We look forward to Sabbath school and learning about God with friends every week. We count down the days to Sabbath. I like that. I like that a lot. But if you saw that, there's a trend in there. Anybody catch the trend? I could have gone through and I think we would have found the same kind of things in there. What was the trend in there? Community, family, donuts, Fred. These are the things that bring us here. The fellowship together, eating donuts and eating potluck, the music we sing together, the friendliness, the being able to engage with one another, to connect with one another. We need to remind ourselves of those things. These reasons right here, these are our whys, why we come to church. These are the things that are going to keep us coming back. And these are the things we need to focus on. These are the things that we need to use to propel us forward to the promised land. Are these things in here? And I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tally them all up. So if you want the results, I'll be more than happy to share those with you. But I just want to see what it is that makes us special, what you love about this church, and then let's go all in on that. Let's be passionate about that. Let's not hold back. Let's put our roots in that. And if you really catch what's really in here, and through all this, it's love. It's love from one another. The connection we have with one another. The fact that Fred, I don't even know this, but Fred doesn't get paid to make the donuts. Fred does it because he loves us. That's it. That's why he does the donuts, is because he loves us. Everything we do is out of love. The potluck, most of us sit here and listen to the sermon, we just go over and we eat. There's a group of ladies, and sometimes a guy or two, over there that are preparing it for it. They're not getting paid for that. They're doing it because they love you. Period. That is what we need to use to move forward. I need one more volunteer. Let me guess. Maddie. Okay, good. A couple of years ago, we were taking our road trip, which we didn't do this summer, and honestly, I missed it. I missed not driving all the way, go that way, all the way out to the West Coast. See if we have enough room here. We drive a road trip all the way out to the West Coast. That's good. Right there. We drive a road trip all the way out to the West Coast. We go visit Andrea's family out in Washington State. And we usually go down south through like Texas, Arizona, up California, the coast, up to Washington, and then we sometimes come back across the store. We go up top, wherever, but we travel the whole country. It takes a long time. It's a lot of hours driving. But a couple years ago, we were driving, and I was saying, I used to live out in California, and I was like, California's great. I went to Yosemite and to like Lake Tahoe and Disneyland and all the cool things. And Andrew's like, was there anything that you never did when you were out there that I could be a part of? Because she wasn't part of my life then. And I was like, well, the one thing I wish I could have done that I never did when I was out there was go to the Redwood Forest. Anybody been to the Redwood Forest before? Oh, man, it was like a dream of mine. I remember as a kid, like, reading stories and seeing, like, cars drive through trees. Because there was, like, a tunnel in a tree, and I was like, man, that would be the coolest thing. And she was like, let's do it. And I was like, well, it's kind of way off the beaten path. She's like, let's do it. And I was like, okay. And so we went, and it was amazing. It was amazing. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life are these trees that are ginormous. Like, I've seen them in pictures and stuff, but not until you're actually face to face with them do you realize how immensely huge these trees are. So right now, this measuring tape's only 25 feet. Face the audience. Come this way a little bit. Now put your hand out. If we go fingertip to fingertip, that's about 30 feet. We're are you touching the wall? Oh, okay. Okay, so about 30 feet. So which is the width of this room? 30 feet. That's how large these trees can get. Across. I'm not talking about like tall. I'm talking about across. These trees can be 30 feet. Thank you, Maddie. That was great. 30 feet across. So just to kind of give you an idea, because if you've never seen one, you can't really visualize that unless you see that. So the tree. So if I had to run around the tree, I'd start over here and have to run like 30 feet that way, 30 feet that way. Like, they're huge. Now, not all of them are 30 feet, but the biggest ones can get up to 30 feet. In fact, here's some pictures. It's kind of hard to see. See that little white and red? That's Grayson and Felicity at the base of this tree. And that's all one tree. It's like, oh, well, there's a few trees. No, that's all one tree right there. And that's just them at the base, like, it looks like a mountain they're about to climb, but it's a tree. I'm sorry you can't see too well, but that's them. This is us driving through a tree. You can't see them, but their heads are peeking out. It's exciting. So this was like my lifelong dream, was to drive through a tree, and it happens like $5, and I was like, totally worth it. And that's all I did. Just drove through a tree and you left, but it was worth it. And then this last one, it's hard to see there, but there's a couple making out at the bottom of the tree. Yeah, you know what's ironic about this? I just thought of this. As a teacher, as a high school teacher, sometimes you run into this. I was walking in front of the gym, and there was a high school couple just stealing a little kiss before they left to go to their class. And this is an Adventist school, so it's like, you can't do that, And I'm like, the first thing that came out of my mind is like, no. First of all, no one wants to see you kiss. That's the first thing that came out of my mind. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to show a picture of us kissing in church today because everyone wants to see us kiss. So I'm kind of a hypocrite, I guess. But yeah, you can't really see these too well. Sorry. But I was trying to show the enormity of these trees. But these trees are 30 feet across. The largest tree, these trees routinely can grow up to 300 feet tall. The largest one is 380 feet tall. 380 feet tall. It's like a skyscraper down in Nashville. These trees are huge. They think that they don't know because they can't cut through and count the rings of these trees because most of the time they kind of hollow out in the middle a little bit. But they think that the oldest trees are 2,500 years old. So these trees were around before Jesus came to earth. Some of these trees out in California are that old. 2,500 years old, 380 feet tall, 30 feet wide. I mean, these guys are huge. And what we know about trees is in order for a tree to grow, like, they've got to have a root system, right? They've got to have some roots. There's another tree out in, another type of tree out in Africa. They call it the shepherd's tree. It's a wild fig tree. They call it the shepherd's tree because they usually grow alone, and shepherds would like to have them as they're out in the areas of Africa, they like to have them there because it's shade, and they can go sit under their tree as their sheep kind of graze a little bit, and it gives them shade, it gives them relief. These trees are only about 15, 20 feet tall. Not very tall trees for trees. 15, 20 feet, but their roots will grow over 200 feet deep into the ground. With the largest roots that's kind of grown over a cave, so they've been able to go down and see the end of the roots, 400 feet below the surface of the ground. These roots grow deep for this single tree that's about 10 or 15 feet tall. 400 feet, the largest. Most of them 200 and some feet down for a 10 to 15 foot tree. So with that being said, how deep are redwood roots for a 380 foot tree? That's 30 feet wide. How deep do those roots need to be? I want some redwood roots. Redwood roots go about 5 to 10 feet below the surface of the earth. That's it. 5 or 10 feet below the surface of the earth to support a 380-foot tall tree. It's crazy. But there's something that I'm not sharing that I think is the key to this. It's rooted in the soil. Like we talked about, it's rooted, we're supposed to be rooted in God's love. The problem is that a lot of us, like I explained, we're distracted. We're on our phones. We're not spending as much time with God as we need to be. Our relationship with God is not where we need it to be individually. And that's where we as a church come in. That's where the redwood roots come in. They only grow 5 or 10 feet deep, but they spread out. They can go up to 100 feet out. They may only be 5 feet deep, but they're 100 feet out. And what they do is they get together. I don't know how they talk about this because they're trees. But they get together with other redwood trees, dozens of other redwood trees that are in the area, and they intertwine their roots. And they intertwine their roots so that now it's not just this tree by itself, like the tree in Africa that's got to go so deep because it's all by himself. It's intertwining its roots with one another, with other trees, so that it can be stronger because of the other tree next to it, or the tree that's 50 feet down the road, or wherever. These roots are all intertwined, and then those trees' roots are intertwined with others, and so it's one big community intertwined. And so when we walk through those doors, and we walk through there having a difficult week, maybe you had problems at work this week, or you walk through that door and you're having marital problems with your spouse, or you walk through that door and you just got word that there's an illness in your life, or maybe you walk through that door and you just heard that cancer is gone. Maybe you walk through that door and you just got engaged. I don't know, but we come in with all these different stories, and we want to be like this tree in Africa where we just stand alone. And that's okay if our roots are 400 feet deep. And that's okay if we have that deep relationship with God. On some level, that's okay. But most of us are 5 foot deep in our relationship with God. In God's love, we don't take it in. I'm speaking for myself. I don't take it in. I need the support of the other redwoods in this congregation. I need to walk in here and say, man, I struggled this week. I had some bad things happen. I made some mistakes. I'm struggling, and I know that I have my other redwoods there to support me, that I'm intertwined with everybody else. So that I know that when I'm struggling, when the wind's blowing and the rain's beating down, that I'm not going to fall over because I've got the support of my church family. And that's what we're about. That's my why. My why is because I come in here and I'm passionate about it. When I realize I'm passionate about is, like Mike said, and what he drew on his shirt, is church family. I'm passionate about the people in this building. And that's what gets me excited. That's what, I don't know who wrote that, but we look forward all week to Sabbath. That's exactly right. And that's exactly how it should be, because, not because just the donuts by themselves, but because I get to eat those donuts with my friends, my family. That's what we're about. One more verse. that I just love this verse. Romans 8:35 and then 37:39. So who can separate us from God? What can come between us and the love of God's anointed? Can troubles, hardships, persecution, hunger, poverty, danger, or even death? The answer is absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. There is nothing that can separate you from God's love. But no matter what comes, we will always taste what? Victory through him who loved us. For I have confidence that nothing, not death, life, heavenly messengers, dark spirits, the present, the future, spiritual powers, height, depth, nor any created thing can come between us and the love of God revealed in the anointed Jesus Christ our Lord. Nothing can come in between us and the love of God. That's what we're rooted in. God's love. And then we take that and we spread it out to one another. We intertwine with one another and we grow together. Right now, most of us are 5 or 6 feet tall. What if we could grow together 380 feet tall? Obviously not physically, but metaphorically. What if we grew like redwoods because we are supporting one another? Because we have our roots where they need to be. We're doing our part individually, spending time with God, but then coming together each week and intertwining with one another so that we can make a whole forest of redwood trees. Then that promised land, it happens. And we're no longer in the desert. We're no longer just circling. We're getting the milk and the honey. And we're growing as a church. So 2 things I think that we need to do. Individually take away. You need to get in that scripture, get on your knees, spend time with God. Put the phone away a little bit. You know, I go about 2.5 hours a day on screen. Can I cut that down to 2? And just spend a half an hour extra with God? I think I can do that. So I'm going to try to do that personally. So that is my goal. Personally, spend time with God. And then weekly, or even throughout the week, but especially when we're here, come together. And in order for us to get intertwined, we got to communicate. We got to spend time together. We got to get to know one another. We got to take our limbs and, obviously not literally, figuratively, well, actually literally, hug. And spend time together, getting to know one another a little bit more, a little bit better, so that we can support one another. If we do that, we're redwoods. Redwoods all the way. Pray with me. Father God, thank you so much for being a God of love, for being a God that we can put roots down and know that you are the bedrock of what we need. You're that solid foundation. But it doesn't end there. You've given us church, you've given us family here together that we can spread out and intertwine with, that we can be one as a church, that we can find our why, find our passion, find our desire, and go forward together as a church, supporting one another, that we can grow beyond what we could even imagine we can grow. We want to be like the redwoods, 30 feet wide, 380 feet tall. We want to surpass what the normal trees in this world look like. We want to grow tall with you and for you and together, Lord. Be with this church. Bless this church. Help us as we grow. I believe that you've got special plans for 2020, and we want to be a part of that. We want to be connected with you so that we can look back a year later and say, man, look at this growth. Look how far we've come because we were planted in your love, and we spread that love with one another. Lord, be with us as we go out here this week. We love you. Amen. So start that.